The studio lights burned bright across the glossy table of The View, and the audience hummed with that familiar electric anticipation that always came before a big guest. It wasn't every day that Robert Downey Jr., the man who'd survived Hollywood's chaos, redeemed himself, and risen higher than ever, sat across from the show's outspoken hosts. Whoopi Goldberg glanced at her cards, smiling with that calm professionalism that came from years of on-air experience. Sunny Hostin adjusted her mic, ready with her sharp journalistic questions. And Joy Behar. Well, Joy was practically bouncing in her seat. Her smirk said everything. She was ready to play. The stage manager counted down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the red light blinked on. "Welcome back to The View," Whoopi announced. "Today, we are joined by one of Hollywood's most talented and fascinating actors, a man who's gone from rock bottom to superhero stardom. Please welcome Robert Downey Jr." The audience erupted. Robert walked out wearing a charcoal suit with a white shirt unbuttoned just enough to look effortless. His trademark grin spread as he waved to the crowd. He hugged Whoopi, nodded to Sunny and Sarah, then turned toward Joy, who greeted him with a mock salute. "Well, well," Joy said as the cheers died down. "Look who finally decided to show up at our little table of troublemakers." Robert laughed as he took his seat. "I figured it was time." "You've scared off half of Hollywood, Joy. I wanted to see what all the fuss was about." The audience laughed and clapped. Joy chuckled, feigning innocence. "Oh, please, I only scare people who deserve it." "Then I'll try to behave," Robert said, smiling. The conversation started lightly enough. Whoopi asked about his new film, an introspective drama about forgiveness and self-discovery, and Robert spoke eloquently about redemption, growth, and learning to laugh at his own flaws. But Joy, always itching for a headline moment, leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "So, Robert," she said, "you've had one of the biggest comebacks in Hollywood history. I mean, it's almost biblical. But tell me, how many times were you arrested again before you figured it out?" The audience murmured, the laughter thinning out as the tone shifted. Robert blinked once, then smiled faintly. "Well, I stopped counting after 3, but I like to think of it as character development." The crowd chuckled, easing slightly. But Joy wasn't done. Character development. That's one way to put it. I mean, most people who end up in jail don't get a billion-dollar franchise to help them clean up the image. Sunny shifted uncomfortably. Whoopi glanced toward the producer's booth as if to silently plead for a commercial break that wasn't coming yet. Robert, though, remained composed, his demeanor as controlled as Tony Stark mid-boardroom battle. "True," he said slowly. "Not everyone gets that chance. But I'd like to think I earned it, not through fame, but through accountability. I spent years putting my life back together piece by piece. Hollywood didn't give me that. I gave that to myself." The audience applauded, sensing the sincerity behind his calm tone. Joy smiled, but her eyes glinted. "So do you think it's fair, then? That you got redemption when so many others don't? Or do you just have better PR?" A low gasp rippled through the crowd. Whoopi's brows lifted. Robert looked at Joy with the kind of measured stillness that only someone who had learned restraint the hard way could master. "You know," he said, "I've been asked that question before. And the truth is, I don't think redemption is something that's given. I think it's something you take responsibility for. And that's not PR, Joy, that's work." The audience clapped again, louder this time. But Joy didn't back off. She crossed one leg over the other, leaning closer. "I get that, but I'm not sure everyone buys it. You went from mugshots to Marvel. It's like America's favorite bad boy becomes America's hero. You don't see how that might look a little convenient?" Robert's smile faded into something quieter, sharper. "I do see how it looks. But I also know what it felt like. Sleeping in a jail cell, losing everything, realizing no one was coming to save me. Hollywood didn't clean me up. I did that in the dark, when nobody was watching." The audience erupted in applause, the sincerity in his words cutting through the tension. Even Sarah nodded in approval, visibly moved. But Joy still wasn't finished. "You make it sound noble," she said, her tone tight. "But isn't there a little bit of irony here? You talk about accountability, yet you built your brand on playing a cocky guy who always gets away with everything. Isn't that, well, a little hypocritical? Robert tilted his head slightly as if weighing his response. Then, with a soft smile, he said, I suppose if we're comparing acting to real life, then yes, it's hypocritical. But if you're suggesting I shouldn't play characters because I once screwed up, I'd say you're missing the whole point of storytelling. Redemption only means something when it's real. The studio clapped again. This time, the applause grew into whistles and cheers. Joy forced a smile, twirling her pen. All right, Philosopher Downey, she said, half joking. You've clearly had time to think about this, he chuckled. Plenty of it. Jail gives you a lot of quiet moments for reflection. Laughter rippled again, breaking the tension slightly. Whoopi jumped in, trying to ease things further. Okay. Before Joy gets herself trending again, let's talk about your new project. Robert smiled and nodded. Sure, the movie's called The Glass Within. It's about facing your reflection, literally and figuratively. About how every person's worst enemy is the version of themselves they refuse to confront. That sounds deep, Sarah said. Was it personal? Robert nodded. Very. Every time I play a character now, I ask myself if I'm being honest. Not just about the role, but about who I am when the cameras turn off. Because fame, success, all of that, it's temporary. Integrity isn't. The studio came back from the commercial break with a tension you could practically touch. The music faded, the lights steadied, and the cameras swept across the audience, who were still buzzing from the moment Robert Downey Jr. had dropped his sharp, composed clapback that left Joy Behar momentarily speechless. The clip had already begun circulating online before the show had even finished its taping. Producers backstage whispered about trending hashtags and skyrocketing viewership. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the professional, tried to steer the energy back into safer waters. We're back with Robert Downey Jr., she said, forcing a genial smile. And we were just talking about his new movie, The Glass Within, a film about reflection, redemption, and second chances. Robert smiled politely, adjusting his microphone. That's right, Whoopi. The movie's really about confronting the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore, something I think most of us can relate to. The audience clapped, still clearly on his side. But the atmosphere had changed. Even Joy, who was usually unbothered by confrontation, sat stiffly, her trademark grin curdled at the edges. She wasn't used to losing control of a segment. Her pride, more than anything, refused to let the moment slip away without reclaiming the upper hand. So, Robert, she said suddenly, cutting off Sarah Haynes mid-question, you say it's about reflection. Let's get real for a second. When you look in the mirror now, do you see Iron Man, or do you see the guy who had to climb out of a hole he dug himself? The audience went quiet again. Whoopi's lips pressed together in a tight line. Sunny Hostin shifted, her eyes flicking between them like a referee before a storm. Robert didn't flinch. His expression was calm, but his eyes gleamed with that quiet, dangerous intelligence that always preceded one of his razor-edged retorts. When I look in the mirror, he said slowly, I see someone who's been both. I see the man who made a mess of his life and the man who cleaned it up. And I see someone who doesn't let other people's commentary define which version I am today. The crowd clapped again, and Joy forced a laugh. All right. No need to psychoanalyze me now, she said, trying to deflect. Robert leaned forward slightly. Why not? You seem to enjoy doing it to everyone else. The laughter that erupted this time wasn't polite. It was explosive. The studio filled with it, rolling like thunder, echoing off the walls. Joy's face went crimson. She laughed along, but the edge in her tone betrayed her embarrassment. Oh, I see how it is, she said, her voice wobbling between humor and irritation. You come on our show, drop your little therapy bombs, and suddenly I'm the patient. Robert smiled smoothly. I didn't say that. But you know, sometimes the loudest person in the room is the one who doesn't want to hear themselves think. The audience gasped, then applauded again, some even standing. Whoopi buried her face in her hand, laughing in disbelief. Lord have mercy. This man's gonna have us all in therapy by the end of the day, she muttered. Joy tried to keep her composure, but her usual rhythm had vanished. Her hands fidgeted with her cue cards, her smile brittle. "Well, Robert, not everyone has a Hollywood redemption arc," she said finally. "Some of us just have to deal with real life, not a script." Robert's eyes softened slightly, and for a moment his tone shifted, gentler but still firm. "I understand that, Joy, believe me, I do. But I didn't have a script when I was trying to get sober. I didn't have one when I was rebuilding my career. The truth is, nobody does. The only difference is, I stopped blaming everyone else for the messes I made." Thailand.